in the silent, deep-cut fjords of Scandinavia, where mist clings to the water and mountains touch the sky. A weapon was born that would forever alter the course of history. It wasn't a sword or an axe, but something far more powerful. Forged from the heart of ancient oaks and bound with iron, the Longship was a true masterpiece of naval engineering. It was shallow, unbelievably fast, and terrifyingly versatile. It was here, in these quiet, dark waters, that the Norsemen, the people we would come to call Vikings, honed the very tool that would carry their shadow to the far corners of the known world. This ship was the beginning of an age of fire and steel. The Longship was more than just a vessel for raiding. It was the key that unlocked the world for the Scandinavian people. Its design was revolutionary. The flexible hull, built using a clinker technique with overlapping planks, allowed it to ride the violent swells of the North Atlantic, not by fighting them, but by moving with them, like a great sea serpent. Its most ingenious feature, however, was its shallow draft. This meant the Longship could not only cross vast oceans, but also navigate far upriver, deep into the heart of unsuspecting lands. It could land on virtually any beach, allowing its crew to appear as if from nowhere, strike and vanish before any defense could be mustered. The iconic dragon-headed prow that sliced through the waves was far more than mere decoration. It was a potent psychological weapon, a terrifying herald announcing the arrival of a storm from the north. When that fearsome silhouette appeared on the horizon, it struck fear into the hearts of all who saw it, a symbol of the chaos to come. It was a dragon ship, a weapon of exploration, trade, and terror, all in one. To truly understand the Viking, you must understand their soul, and that soul was forged in the cold fire of their mythology. They didn't see the world as a permanent, stable place. Instead, they lived with the belief in Ragnarök, the twilight of the gods. This was their prophecy of a final, glorious, and apocalyptic battle, where even the gods themselves, Odin, Thor, Freya, were doomed to die. The world would be consumed by fire and ice, only to be reborn. This fundamental belief in a predestined, doomed world created a culture unlike any other. It bred a people who revered heroic death above all else. Courage wasn't just a virtue, it was a necessity. Glory was not something to be hoped for, but something to be seized in the brief, fleeting time they had. To die bravely in battle was the ultimate honor, a one-way ticket to Valhalla, Odin's great hall, where they would feast and fight until the final day of Ragnarök. To do anything less, to die of old age or sickness, was to fade into the cold, dreary mists of Helheim, an eternity of obscurity. This worldview drove them to take risks that others would find insane, to seek fame that would outlive them, and to face death, not with fear, but with a song on their lips. For centuries, the monasteries of Britain and Europe had been centers of peace, prayer, and learning. They were islands of tranquility in a turbulent world. But in the year 793 AD, that peace was shattered forever. The storm that had been gathering in the northern fjords finally broke upon the shores of the holy island of Lindisfarne, off the coast of Northumbria. The monks, the chroniclers of a peaceful age, could only watch in horror. Their writings captured the sheer terror of the event, describing how the ravaging of heathen men miserably desecrated God's church with plunder and slaughter. They saw the Vikings not as men, but as divine punishment, a plague sent from the heavens. This was the first lightning strike, the brutal, shocking event that announced the dawn of the Viking Age to a terrified and utterly unprepared Europe. The raid on Lindisfarne was a declaration. It showed the world the reach of the Longship and the ferocity of the men who sailed them. The age of prayer was giving way to an age of the axe. The Viking impact was not just one of terror. Their voyages of exploration and settlement redrew the map of the world. From the icy shores of Greenland and the newfound lands of North America to the bustling markets of Constantinople, their influence was felt everywhere. They were not just raiders, but also traders, explorers, and settlers. They established cities like Dublin in Ireland and left their genetic and cultural mark across England, Scotland, and Normandy in France. Their language seeped into English, giving us words like sky, egg, knife, and window. They were a people of profound contradictions. brutal warriors who were also skilled poets, pragmatic traders who held deep spiritual beliefs, and seafaring adventurers who were also farmers and lawmakers. The Viking Age, which began with the violent raid on Lindisfarne, would last for nearly 3 centuries, a period of dynamic and often violent change that shaped the development of modern Europe. The shadow of the dragon ship was long, and in many ways we are still living within it today. Thank you for joining us on this journey back to the age of the Vikings. The Viking raids were evolving. What started as quick, brutal strikes for treasure was now something far more ambitious. In the year 865, a massive force, known to the Anglo-Saxons as the Great Heathen Army, landed in England. This wasn't just another raiding party, this was an invasion. Thousands of warriors, led by legendary figures like Ivar the Boneless and Halfdan Ragnarsson, came not just for plunder, but for land. They came to stay. Their longships disgorged an army that moved with terrifying speed and efficiency. The patchwork of Anglo-Saxon kingdoms, accustomed to fighting each other, were unprepared for this unified, relentless force. One by one, they began to fall. Northumbria, with its rich monasteries, was the first to be shattered. Its capital, York, was captured and renamed Jorvik, becoming the heart of a new Viking kingdom. Next was East Anglia, its king, Edmund, martyred for refusing to renounce his faith. The great kingdom of Mercia was partitioned, its eastern half absorbed by the invaders. Within a few years, only one major Anglo-Saxon kingdom remained standing, Wessex, under the rule of a young king named Alfred. The great heathen army had carved out a vast territory for themselves, an area that would come to be known as the Danelaw. This was where Viking law, Viking language, and Viking culture held sway. It was no longer a hit-and-run affair. This was a migration of warriors, their families, and their followers, carving a new homeland out of England with their axes and their ambition. But the Viking spirit wasn't solely defined by conquest and destruction. Back in Scandinavia, a different kind of pressure was building. Overpopulation and a shortage of good farmland meant that many, especially younger sons who wouldn't inherit, had to look elsewhere for their future. Their gaze turned not east to the fractured kingdoms, but west, across the vast, unknown expanse of the North Atlantic. This was a challenge not of swords, but of seamanship and survival. Guided by tales from sailors blown off course, these intrepid pioneers undertook incredible voyages. In their open longships, they faced treacherous seas, icy winds, and disorienting fog, navigating by the sun, stars, and the flight of seabirds. They discovered and settled the rugged volcanic islands of the Faroes, a remote archipelago between Norway and their next great prize, Iceland. When Norwegian sailors first landed on Iceland, they found a land of fire and ice, a barren, beautiful wilderness of glaciers, volcanoes, and steaming geothermal springs. It was almost completely uninhabited. This was a blank slate, a chance to build a society from scratch, free from the kings and earls of their homeland. Thousands of settlers from Norway, and even from Viking settlements in Britain and Ireland, made the perilous journey. In Iceland, they didn't create a kingdom. Instead, they built a unique society of free farmers, poets, and lawmakers. They established the Althing, an open-air national assembly where chieftains would gather each year to pass laws and settle disputes. It was one of the world's first parliaments, a testament to their desire for a community governed by law, not by the whim of a single ruler. This new Icelandic commonwealth became a cradle of Norse culture, where the great sagas, the epic stories of their gods, heroes, and voyages, would be written down for the first time. Even the raw, untamed landscape of Iceland wasn't the final frontier for the most restless of these Norsemen. Among the settlers was a man whose name would become legendary, Eric the Red. Fiery-tempered and quick to violence, Eric found himself exiled from Norway for manslaughter. He settled in Iceland, but his temper got the better of him again, and after another feud ended in more killings, the Althing banished him from Iceland for 3 years. Facing exile, Eric didn't look back. He looked west. He had heard rumors of a vast land spotted decades earlier by a sailor named Gunnbjörn. With a small crew of loyal followers, Eric set sail into the icy waters of the Denmark Strait. He found the land, a massive island dominated by a colossal ice sheet, but along its southwestern coast he discovered fjords with green, grassy pastures during the short, intense summer. When his 3 years of exile were up, Eric returned to Iceland with a plan. He knew he needed to convince others to join him in settling this new, harsh land. In a masterstroke of marketing, he named the vast, frozen island Greenland. He claimed it was a land of opportunity, painting a picture of lush valleys and endless potential. The name worked. Hundreds of settlers, eager for their own land, packed their lives and livestock onto longships and followed Eric the Red into the unknown. They established 2 settlements on Greenland's coast, creating one of the most remote and challenging European colonies on Earth, a stark testament to the Vikings' unparalleled resilience and their unyielding drive to push beyond the known horizon. The story, however, doesn't end on Greenland's icy shores. The westward impulse was now ingrained in their very culture. Eric the Red had a son, a man who had inherited his father's adventurous spirit, but was perhaps more level-headed, Leif Erikson. Growing up in Greenland, Leif would have heard tales not just of Iceland and Norway, but of lands even further west, glimpsed by sailors who had been blown off course in the treacherous North Atlantic. Around the year 1000 AD, Leif organized his own expedition. He bought a ship, gathered a crew of about 35 men, and set sail, determined to find these mysterious lands for himself. They first came upon a barren land of flat rock and glaciers, which Leif named Helluland, or Land of Flat Stones, likely modern-day Baffin Island. Pushing south, they found a forested land with white sandy beaches, which he called Markland, or Forest Land, probably the coast of Labrador. But they didn't stop. Sailing further south, they finally landed in a place that astonished them. Compared to Greenland, it was a paradise. The climate was mild, the rivers teemed with salmon larger than any they had ever seen, and the forests were dense and rich. Most remarkably, they found wild grapes growing, something completely unknown in their northern world. Because of these vines, Leif Erikson named this new territory Vinland, the land of wine. They built a small settlement, a collection of turf-walled longhouses, and spent the winter there, exploring the surrounding country. For a brief, fleeting moment in history, the Vikings stood on the shores of North America. These Norse explorers, in their magnificent longships, were the first Europeans to reach the New World, nearly 500 years before Christopher Columbus embarked on his famous voyage. Though their settlement in Vinland would not last, their incredible journey represents the absolute pinnacle of the Viking Age of exploration, a final breathtaking leap across the ocean. The shadow of the longships fell not only on the shores of the west. Far to the east, a different kind of Viking saga was unfolding. Following the great rivers of Russia, the Dnieper and the Volga, Swedish Vikings, known to the locals as the Russ, journeyed south. They weren't just raiders, they were pioneers, traders, and empire builders. Their cargo was rich. The finest furs from the northern forests, shimmering amber from the Baltic coast, and tragically, human lives, slaves captured in their relentless expansion. Their destination was a city of legends, a place they called Miklagard, the Great City. We know it as Constantinople, the glittering heart of the Byzantine Empire. The reputation of these northern warriors preceded them. Their ferocity, loyalty, and unmatched skill in combat were so renowned that the Byzantine emperor himself sought their service. They became the elite Varangian Guard, the personal protectors of the most powerful man in the known world. Imagine it. Vikings, far from their frozen homelands, standing guard in the opulent halls of a Roman emperor, their axes and mail a stark contrast to the silks and gold of the court. This wasn't just a job, it was a testament. They were acknowledged on the world stage as the finest warriors alive. But their influence in the East wasn't solely defined by the sharp edge of an axe. These Vikings were cunning merchants, architects of a sprawling trade network that connected the cold Baltic to the warm markets of Baghdad. Their hunger was insatiable, not for land, but for silver. The gleaming silver dirhams of the Abbasid Caliphate became the currency of the Viking Age, the ultimate prize that funded their ships, their hauls, and their ambitions. To get it, they traded the bounty of the north, beeswax, honey, fine furs, and the grim reality of the slave trade. Thousands of captives were sold in the markets of the East, their fates powering the Viking economy. The history of this era was built as much on the delicate scales of the merchant as it was on the brutal swing of the axe. It was a complex world of commerce and conquest, where a Viking could be a pirate one day and a diplomat the next. Back in Scandinavia, however, a profound change was sweeping across the land. The old gods, Odin, Thor, Freya, were beginning to retreat into the mists of legend. A new power was rising, represented not by a hammer, but by a cross. As Viking chieftains fought and forged larger kingdoms, they began to see the immense political and economic advantages of adopting Christianity. A Christian king was seen as more legitimate, more civilized by the powerful rulers of Europe. It opened doors to new alliances, more favorable trade deals, and a way to centralize power under a single unifying faith. The baptism of King Harald Bluetooth in Denmark around the year 965 was a monumental turning point. The famous Jelling stone he erected declares that he made the Danes Christian. It was a public and permanent declaration. A few decades later, the fierce warrior king Olaf Tryggvason would do the same in Norway, often through less than gentle means. The conversion wasn't always peaceful. The cross was, in many ways, hammered into the heart of Scandinavia. It was a slow, often violent process of cultural transformation, turning raiding sea kings into pious Christian monarchs, fundamentally altering the very soul of their people. The age of the berserker was giving way to the age of the bishop. So, how did the Viking Age end? There was no final cataclysmic battle, no single event that brought the curtain down. It didn't end with a bang, but with a baptism. It faded away through conversion and assimilation. The Vikings didn't just disappear, they evolved. Their descendants became the Normans who conquered England. They became the Norse Gaelic kings of Dublin, ruling a vibrant Irish sea kingdom. They became the Christian rulers of the newly unified nations of Denmark, Norway, and Sweden. The raider became a king, the longship a merchant vessel. The shadow of the longship may have faded from the coastlines of Europe, but it never truly disappeared. Its legacy is indelible, woven into the very fabric of the modern world. It survives in the DNA of nations from Britain to Russia, a testament to their journeys and settlements. It lives in our language, in words like berserk, ransack, and even Thursday, Thor's Day. It can be seen in the roots of Iceland's Althing, one of the world's oldest parliaments, a Viking invention. Most of all, the Viking legacy endures in that eternal, restless spirit of exploration, of pushing boundaries and venturing into the unknown. They were more than just pirates. They were explorers, poets, traders, and state-builders whose influence shaped the course of history in ways we are still uncovering today. Their age may be over, but the echoes of their axes and their sails still resonate through time. Thank you so much for joining us on this journey through the Viking Age. If you enjoyed this series, please hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and ring the bell so you don't miss our next historical adventure. We'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Until next time, stay curious.